Hi everyone, it's Miss Lau, and today I'm going to teach you how to roll out a slab. A slab of clay is sort of like a flat pancake. Kind of like when you're making sugar cookies and you roll out the dough, that's a slab. So I have my piece of clay, and as you can see, it's sort of like a hockey puck. So before I even use the rolling pin, I'm going to flatten it using the ball of my hand right here. When I'm flattening it, I'm standing up and I'm pushing down into the clay. Make sure that when you're rolling out your clay, even with your palm or the rolling pin, that you're really mindful not to over flatten the edges. These are the areas that get flatter first, so we want to focus on the middle of the clay. So I'm going to stand up and push down, and again, I'm pushing in the middle. Then to make sure that everything is even, I'm going to flip my clay, and I'm going to do the same thing to the other side. Starting in the middle, again using this part of my palm. And now it's more manageable to roll with a rolling pin. For my design, I'm going to be making an avocado. The avocado is a long shape, so when I roll it, I want to roll it up and down. I think it's going to be wide enough, but we'll see. So with my rolling pin, same thing, position it in the middle first, and you're going to use these small little rolls and push the clay up. One thing to be mindful of is don't let the rolling pin go over the clay and onto the table, because again, that will flatten out the edges and make them too thin. So now I'm going to wiggle the rolling pin downwards and then stop when I get right to the edge. Same, give it a flip. Small little wiggles, stop at the edge. From the middle, small little wiggles down, stop at the edge. I'm gonna flip. And now that the clay is a little bit thinner, I can start doing longer rolls from top to bottom. Again, notice that the board is, or the rolling pin is not hitting the board. Give it a flip. Wonderful. And now I can see if my avocado will fit. I think I need to make it a little wider down here. So I'm gonna rotate my board and I'm going to roll it out from the middle. So we're spreading the clay from the middle out. Perfect. That's how you roll out a slab. Let's review how to roll out a slab. Tip number 1, stand up when you're working. It makes it a lot easier to be able to control the clay. Pre-flatten the clay with your palm before using a rolling pin. Next, remember to move the clay from the middle outwards. Don't forget to flip and repeat on the other side. Lastly, be mindful of your edges. Don't make them too thin. When you're using the rolling pin, roll the clay from the center out to the edge, but stop before you get to the board. Now that I have my slab rolled out, I need to smooth it out before I transfer my design onto the slab. So I'm using what's called a metal rib, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to compress the clay particles down. Not only will this make my clay look really smooth, but it'll also make it stronger. So take your rib and you're going to go in one direction, sweeping into the opposite. So starting opposite of myself, and then I'm pulling the clay down towards me, and you have to figure out what kind of pressure you want. The harder you push down, the more you might get the ridges, so maybe lighten it up. Then, same thing as before, we're going to flip very gently, and then starting on one end, pull towards me towards the opposite end. Now that my clay is smooth, you'll notice that it's shiny, and now I can transfer my design onto my slab. So taking my design, I'm lining it up and just pulling the paper up to make sure that the clay is completely underneath my design. With my hands, I'm gently pushing down, and I'm going to use a blunt pencil. If it's too sharp, you might rip the paper, and that's okay too, but for this, I'm using a blunt pencil, and then very gently going over the shape of my avocado. And you'll see in a moment when I lift the paper up, it will have dented the clay. I'm also going to mark where I'm putting the facial features. Even though I'm building them up, it'll help me in the future know exactly where I wanted to put them. You can also play this by ear or make modifications as you go, so this step maybe isn't so important to you. And here's where the pit's going to go. And you can see I poked through my paper, and that's okay. So gently peel your design off. You'll probably want to save your design so you can reference it later, so make sure you put it in a safe place. And now we can cut out our design. Now that I'm ready to cut out my design, I have two different tools that I want to talk about. This is called a needle tool because it has a needle on the end. It is sharp, so be careful. There's also this is a knife. The knife is also sharp. So just notice how each one is shaped. The knife is flat, whereas the needle tool is round. Each work fine, and it'll give you a different kind of texture, so you can choose whichever one you want to use. I'm going to be using a needle tool. When I'm tracing my outline, notice that I'm using my pinky and I'm sticking it out for stability. So my pinky is just helping me balance my hand, but if I feel like I have enough control, I can just cut according to my line. Take away this extra clay, and then what you're going to do with it is ball it up so that when it's time to clean up, it's easier to manage. Notice that when I cut my clay, I get these little crumbly bits. That's very normal. What you're going to do is using your finger, you can just smooth them out and then flip and smooth them out. And now you're ready for your coil. Let's review. Use a metal rib to smooth out your clay as well as compress the clay particles so that your slab is stronger. Don't forget to flip and do the other side. Then line up your design on top of your slab, picking up the edges to make sure that the slab is big enough. Use a blunt pencil to trace over any of the details that you think are important, but mostly the outline of your design. Then use either a knife or a needle tool to cut your design out. Finally, use your finger to smooth out the edges, and again, flip and smooth out the other side.